You're listening to Prosper in the Kingdom, the podcast where faith meets practical strategies to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Join hosts John Cleaver and Wendy Lee as they share insights to equip you in your journey toward abundance, spiritually, financially, and beyond. Just a reminder, every situation is unique. The content of this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as specific financial or medical advice.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Prosper in the Kingdom. I'm your host, John C., with the super cool Wendy Lee. Wendy, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Super cool. I like it.
Super cool. There you go. Yeah, just keep sending
Totally
that
rad,
$20 intro payment. Hey, you know what? I went to high school out in California back in the day, and so it just some of that still sticks, even though I've been out in the Midwest since the late 80s. But anyway, so thanks for giving me a hard time. I'm all about the tough love. So, but today we're talking about some stuff that I'm super excited about, and it deals with obviously prospering the kingdom. We're biblically based. And I tell people I'm not Billy Graham, but I am applying biblical principles to what we're doing with money. Why? Because there's a lot of great information in there. The Bible talks more about money than it talks about love. And so what we're going to be talking about today is the truth about financial blessing most Christians miss. And, a lot of us, and I don't know if you can relate, Wendy, but, a lot of us hear some things or we think it's in the Bible, but because unfortunately we're not diving into the Bible on a daily basis, a lot of us miss the true story behind it. Right. And the big one that jumps to mind, and we've talked about it before, is, money is the root of all evil or something like that. And so a lot of Christians are kind of gun shy when it comes to building wealth and things like that. And that's not what it says. The love of money. Money's just a tool. But, today we're really kind of diving into I think a lot of Christians are missing the point. I mean, you agree with that, Wendy, or disagree? Or
I think there's a lot of different mindsets around money that are not always in line with truth. And because we're raised in different churches, different backgrounds, and different denominations, and people think, there's like legalism that's passed down that is just becomes part of tradition, or, things talked about that aren't actually rooted in biblical truth. And so, when we first started talking the name Prosper in the Kingdom, my biggest thing was I don't want people to think we're talking prosperity preaching type stuff.
No.
Not. We don't believe in name it and claim it. But there is a balance, I think, between that sometimes is missing from the money is bad to, between that and the, name it and claim it. Like there is a middle ground that is truth. And that's what we have.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. I mean, it's, most Christians out there are praying for that financial breakthrough, right? But many people are missing what God's already doing in their lives, right? People tend to think God will provide and stop there, right? It's kind of the manna from heaven. God's just going to drop a bunch of money and just handle things and take care of it. In reality, God does obviously provide, but he's not going to provide a suitcase full of cash. He's providing, opportunity and things like that, but he expects something in return, right? It's, and I always joke about the people that talk about the law of attraction, just think, name it and claim it. I love that analogy because that's simply what it is. But, the last few letters of the law of attraction is action. You got to take action, right? So God expects you to be a good steward, right? He expects stewardship with your money. He's placing these gifts in your hands, the opportunity, the paychecks in your hands, and he expects you to be a good steward of that money, which is why we talk about the spending plan and things like that, so you can be intentional and control your money. And we also talk about multiplication, and that's what he's expecting from you is good stewardship and multiplication. So really the core idea around what the Bible's teaching is that God gives you opportunity, right? And we all have opportunities pop up in our life, but many of us don't take them, or, due to fear, or just we weren't good stewards, so we don't have the seed money to take advantage of those opportunities. He gives you the ability, right? And that's one thing I think a lot of Americans, especially, the entrepreneurs out there, are really good at. We know how to go out and make money, right? We have the ability to go out and create income and side hustles and multiple jobs, but unfortunately we don't, because we're not good stewards, we don't really do as good as we could with it. And so that, that creates a lack, right? And he gives you the responsibility, and he gives you that opportunity to kind of say, hey, you're responsible for this, going back to, again, the stewardship piece. But what you do with all of that really determines the outcome, your outcome, right? So today we're going to be talking in kind of a deeper dive on why God blesses financially. I mean, let's be honest. Especially if you've got kids, you can relate to this. You want your kids to do well, okay? You don't want to do it for them necessarily, but you want them to do well. So you want to teach them and show them the way, i.e., what's in the Bible, read it, right? That's the instruction manual. And you want them to be blessed financially. And God wants you to be blessed financially. But where most believers get stuck, are some of the things we just talked about. So we're going to dive into that a little bit, and how to step into the 3M framework that, Wendy and I have kind of designed with Prosper in the Kingdom, of that make, manage, and multiply. Because that's really, we try to keep it simple, create that plan for you. And it's like, hey, make not just income, but make, create margin, right? Manage that money, translation, be a good steward with it. Every bit of dollar you get in your hand is like a seed, right? You can either plant that seed or you can eat that seed like a bird, right? Most of us, unfortunately, eat it through daily living, the toys, the stuff like that, all the lifestyle increases and things like that. So we don't really have it to go plant it in the ground and multiply it. So, let's kind of dive into that.
Yeah.
From here. So,
yeah. And one thing, like, I've heard especially when I first got into financial planning with you, I actually was like a little bit scared for the fact that as Christians, I had this mindset, like, we're supposed to be poor for a long time, like we're supposed to give everything away. I was that person that I would literally empty out my bank account if there was a need in the church, and at the detriment to my own family sometimes. And that is not actually stewardship, unless God specifically calls you to do that as a step of faith, right? That's not actually stewardship. And we've been trained to kind of think small, right? Most believers, most Christians, we think we need just enough for us, right? So to pay our bills, to stay out of debt, just enough to get by, and we give everything else away, right? Or we don't need more. I hear people say, and I used to be this person, but now when people say it, it makes me cringe, because I realize the foundation of it. But I don't need to make more money. Well, you might not need to make more money, but if you're just thinking about you, that's you being selfish. If you have the ability to make more money and you can be a bigger blessing to other people, then that's your responsibility. So our mindset 100%, might feel 100%. Responsible. Yeah. Our mindset might feel responsible of like, okay, I got to pay my bills, stay out. But the bigger picture is, yes, we want provision, and God's word says he will provide, but also God's plan is not just that. It is that growth, expansion, and multiplication, so that he can work through us, so that he can do things through us if we have the ability. You guys, some people don't have the ability, right? Some people don't have the ability to generate income. If you're watching this, you're probably someone that has the ability. And so it becomes a responsibility. And I have a scripture I'll bring up in a little bit, but it's not enough to just get by. And I'll go back to this moment that it was actually, I'm going to shout out Ray Higdon. He says, if you're just thinking, and this was about making money, if I just make this much, my family will be good. He's like, stop being so selfish, right? And that was the first time that mind shift happened for me. Is like, no, it's not just about me. It's about that mom that I can bless and cover her groceries or her electric bill. You know, that single mom that's struggling, or that orphan that, you know, is, I mean, without money, we wouldn't have been able to bring kids into our home that had no home. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and that's a big piece of it. And going back to 1 Timothy 5:8, right? It talks about, you know, providing for your family. And a lot of people think, okay, well, if I just take care of my household and then that's what I'm supposed to do. And everything else, I'm supposed to just barely get by. And that's not it at all. Again, you know, first of all, you are supposed to provide for your family, but that's not just you and your kids. That's your, you know, your immediate household, but also your extended family. And have the wherewithal and the ability to do that if need be, step in, you know, take care of your parents. You've got siblings going through things or whatever, but like that. But if you don't do that, then you, and again, 1 Timothy 5:8, you denied the faith and you are worse than an unbeliever, right? So just straight up, but that's again, not going into our call to provide for the kingdom. Like you were talking about, you know, bringing in children and things like that. So it really talks about, you know, multiplication. God multiplies. He doesn't just maintain. And one of my favorite parables, and I bring this up constantly, is out of Matthew 25, right? The parable of the talents. And if you haven't dove into that in a while, you know, the listener, do that. Take some time, dive into your Bible, you know, dust it off and kind of dive in if you're not reading it on a daily basis. But, you know, the breakdown of that story is, you know, there were these three guys and the master, right? So think of, you're one of the three guys, and I use that term unisex, right? And the master, obviously, we know who that represents in the story. But all were given something, right? And given a task to do, not equal, but intentional, right? You know, some were given a little, some were given a lot, that kind of thing. And the outcomes, you know, those that multiplied were rewarded. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's right there in the Bible, Matthew 25. Look it up, right? And the one who preserved, you know, one guy went out and just buried it because he was afraid of upsetting the master and afraid of losing, you know, i.e. fear, right? Mm-hmm. Fear kept him from taking advantage of the opportunity. The master gave them all opportunities, right? To, you know, go out and multiply, and they all reacted differently to it, you know. And the one, like I said, the one who didn't do anything, just kind of sat in fear and just kind of stuck his head in the sand. He actually stuck the money in the sand, lost everything, right? Yeah. And the insight, you know, the failure wasn't losing the money. It's not, the story isn't about, you know, losing money or making more money. It's about doing nothing, right? And that's what most of us do. Like you said, you know, we're just kind of getting by and not really making things happen. And we've got this selfish mindset. And I love that you said selfish, because that's exactly what it is. We're only thinking of ourselves and our immediate household. Yeah. You know, I go to church on Sunday and, you know, I'm making good money and, you know, this, that, and the other, but we're not really in the game, so to speak, from a Christian perspective. Right. Yeah. And the modern, you know, kind of the modern tie into all this is, you know, we're sitting on opportunities. We're waiting for the perfect timing, right? We're avoiding risk, i.e. fear, instead of being good stewards and assigning money to tasks, right? Giving our money jobs to do. Okay. And I'm not just talking about paying bills, you know, and the first person you should be paying is paying yourself. After obviously rent to Caesar, you got to pay your taxes, and then tithing, which we've got a whole other video on what is tithing. But the core message in all of this is God is not glorified by you maintaining. Okay. God is not glorified when people look at you as a Christian and say, well, they're getting by, they're doing okay, right? He's glorified by multiplication and you doing your work for the kingdom. And I'm not talking about you hopping on a plane and doing the mission trips. I'm talking about you sponsoring the mission trips, you helping your church. Like Wendy, you know, you adopting those children and bringing them into your home. So that's where he's glorified. It sets you apart, right? It sets you apart as a Christian, and you're in the game at that point, so to speak. Yeah. So again, you know, the whole thing isn't about you creating this wealth for yourself, and that's not what we talk about. It's not the prosperity gospel. It's about you have been given an opportunity to make, manage, and multiply, right? And as a Christian, I think it's your duty to do that.
Absolutely. And I was actually reading last night I'm doing the Bible in a year, and right now we're in the New Testament. We're in Luke chapter 12, and I was reading commentaries by this guy named David Guzik, which he's like my favorite with his commentaries. But in Luke 12, it talks about not worrying about money, right? And that even God even provides food for the birds. And but his commentary, when it says, "Therefore I say, do not worry about your life," David makes this commentary. He says, "Greed and worry are closely connected." And I want you guys to hear this, because I think sometimes we think that greed is people that have a lot. And I've said this before, but a lot of times it's just the people that are so connected to money in general, right? And that's going to be what makes them feel free. But he says greed can never get enough, and worry is afraid it will never have enough, but neither have their eyes on Jesus.
Yeah.
And when it says the birds, right? He says, take careful note. The birds don't worry, but they do work. They don't just sit with open mouths expecting God to fill them.
Ooh,
and I just thought that was so powerful, especially with what we're talking about today. Like, he will provide. In the Old Testament, over and over, like, you know, Jacob, when he blesses his kids, like, he puts blessings and curses. And like, that was in the Old Testament over and over. You get blessings or you get curses based on who you are as a human, right? And like the Lord, a good father, wants to bless. And a lot of times those blessings in the Old Testament were with stuff. They were with flocks, and they were with cattle, and they were with land, right? The blessings were material things, but it was to generate wealth. It was to be able to be an impact. So 3 clear purposes why God blesses financially. One, right, is to provide, is that responsibility to our own household, is, you know, for us to be able to be stable. And, you know, our kids, you know, the times in my life where I'm going through financial trouble, it's like, my concern most is what my kids will learn from that. Are they going to see me trust God and move through that with faith and work? Or are they going to see me roll over and, you know, feel like, oh, woe is me? And then the second one is so that we can be a blessing, right? God provides so we can give. And, you know, you mentioned we did a video on tithe. You guys just go to our YouTube channel and type in tithe and you'll find it. But, you know, people say 10%. No, actually, the Old Testament, they had multiple tithes. So it was like over 20% that they were giving, 25%.
Closer to 50, depending on the year. You know,
depending on the year. And so God provides so that we can be a blessing, so that we can give. Provision is meant to flow through you. It is not, we are not supposed to be receivers. We're supposed to be conduits, right? So we don't just get, I was just reading the story and same in Luke, right? Where the guy who is filling up the storehouses with all his wealth. And God's like, what are you doing? Because you're not glorifying me in that by just saving for it to sit there for when you die, you have nothing, right? Yeah. It's to be a blessing. And, you know, the third is to multiply. When we have the knowledge. Listen, if you live in the world today, you have the internet, you can learn these things. We have the knowledge and the ability and the resources to grow our money, get our money. That's the whole parable of the talents, is God bless the one who figured out how to multiply the talent, to increase your capacity to make an impact so that you can one day work less and serve more, right? Being tied, I don't think God ever meant for us to be tied to a desk 8 hours a day, right? We need to be generating income and getting our money, making money, so that we can focus on being servants for the kingdom. I mean, and it's not greed, it's stewardship. So God doesn't just bless to meet your needs, he blesses to expand your reach. Sorry, I went long on that.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. No. It's important. I mean, this is an important message because I think so many people get caught up in it. I mean, you know, thinking that God's just going to provide, like you're just all of a sudden going to get a raise, and he may do that. I mean, obviously he can do anything, but That's not the intent. He wants you, again, he wants you in the game, not just sitting there waiting to be fed, right? Waiting for your heavenly welfare, right? He wants you to actually get in the game and gives you the opportunity, not just the money, right? Deuteronomy 8:18, God gives the power to get wealth. And I pulled it up, but thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth. This is King James. And that he may establish his covenant, which he swore unto thy fathers, as it is this day. I don't like the King James. I'm more of an ESV guy, but so that's it all comes from him, right? It's the power to get wealth. And it's just like we're sitting on the sidelines. Okay, I know you gave me the power to do it, but I want you to do it for me. And that's not the relationship he wants, right? And that's an important distinction, right? It's not a pile of cash. It's the ability, the ideas, right? The connections that you make, the doors that are open for you. And so many times we don't take action because, number one, we haven't been good stewards, right? So we don't have the ability, the resources, even though he gave it to us, we didn't do right by him on the stewardship side. So it's like, well, I don't have the opportunity to take the money. And then the other thing is the fear. I'm afraid to do it. And fear, false expectations appearing real, right? That's the acronym. We don't do it out of fear. So we hoard for that safety piece, going back to what you were talking about, the birds, right? And he's gonna take care of it. Just trust. That's what he wants. It gives you that free will to be able to manage this stuff that he's in blessing you with, and then trusting him to take action and follow his guidance in your life, right? Business opportunities that come up, right? The business, to start a side business or start a business, to buy a business, create that side income opportunities, right? So many people, they want it, right? And we even talk to people about, coming in. We've got a part-time program that people work with us, and someone, oh, I don't know, it's like, that's fear, right? What is it going to hurt if you're dipping your toe into an opportunity part-time in your spare time or whatever the case may be? And I'm not just talking to us, I'm talking to all the things out there, right? Yeah, exactly. Or building a new skill, right? Oh, I'm too old to learn it or whatever, or building new connections, right? Oh, I don't want to, I'm shy. We give ourselves these excuses, these outs, and it's like, no, man, get into the game. We need you in the fight, right? And that's where people, I think, miss it. They're waiting for these miracles, right? And it's like, okay, it's like the old story of and I'm sure you've heard it, where there was a massive flood and an old man was sitting on the roof, and a man came by in a boat and said, hey, hop in my boat. No, I'm waiting for God to rescue me. And he's like, okay. And then somebody else came along, same story, and then a helicopter came along and said, get in the helicopter. No, I'm waiting for God to come rescue me. And so then he drowned. And because the floodwaters kept rising, and he was at the pearly gates, and he asked God, he's like, why did you let me die? He's like, what are you talking about? I gave you all these opportunities to save yourself, yet you took no action. And that's I got chills just thinking about that. It's a very simple story, but it's so true.
It's so true.
And it's true with people and your money as well. We make enough income, especially here in the United States. And I know things seem tight because of this, that, or the other, but again, it starts with getting your house in order, getting that financial, and it all ties to the parable of the talents, right? The servant didn't lose. It was due to his inactivity. He buried it in the sand, right? Out of fear. And that opportunity in front of you may already be the answer you've been praying for, but because you're looking for somebody to drop the actual solution in your lap, you're not taking action on it. And just like the guy on the roof, right, in the flood. But
I think, sorry, if I can chime in real quick. Yeah, and I think one thing too is there's not one thing God has taught me in the last year is prayer, like praying for wisdom. The Bible says that if you ask for wisdom, it will be given. Yes. Like that's a promise of God.
Yep.
And so I think too, like instead of letting fear guide decisions, start praying for an increase and abundance of godly wisdom. And let me tell you also, you're not going to get it if you just pray and you're not in the word. Get in the word, start praying. God will reveal. His truth is there. His wisdom is there, right? Yeah. So, but pray for that wisdom, because God will show you opportunity. Yeah. He will make it clear. And like move in it. If you feel peace about it, you move in it. So
yeah. And one of the things too, just to touch on that, and you can do the Bible in a year. I'm actually in the book of Samuel right now. I watched that House of David and I'm just like, man, Samuel is just an awesome book. But getting into the daily word, what that does is, you're reading that, you're taking that in and it gets you in a rhythm with God, right? It gets you in a rhythm and it becomes easier and easier to communicate. And you start hearing better, have your quiet time and actually sincerely pray. Don't just say, in your traffic on the way to work or whatever, hey God, I mean, you can do that, but that really setting aside some intentional quiet time really, really kind of helps that happen. Right. So let's break this down, tied into the 3M, right? The make, manage, and multiply. So most of us out there, we focus on that make piece, right? Again, it's not just about making more income, additional streams of income, but it's also about making more margin, getting rid of the debt, getting rid of the frivolous spending and things like that. And then we move into the manage piece. And that's really kind of the core of this, along with the multiply, is that manage piece, being intentional about directing cash flow. Every dollar you have that comes into your hand has a job to do. Okay. It's like a seed. It's used to create margin by paying down debt or restructuring things. I shared a story last week. I went and had my insurance reviewed, my homeowners and auto insurance. And I'm saving a few $100s a month now. I just created more margin without actually creating more income. Right.
Yeah.
And realizing that not every dollar is spendable. It's not yours to spend, right? Mm-hmm. It has a job to do. If everything is consumed, which unfortunately we're a consumer society here in America, right? Nothing gets deployed. And our episode last week, we talked about, are you spending or are you deploying?
Yeah.
Poor people spend. Most of us in middle class spend. Wealthy deploy. They still spend some. That's why you have a spending plan, right? But if you do that, if everything is consumed, then nothing is multiplied. Okay. And then, what is multiplying? Well, that's that money working for you, right? You're creating assets to build additional income. And again, it's not about you keeping all the income like Scrooge McDuck, right? It's about you turning around and being a blessing to your community, to your family, to your church, right? To the kingdom. And that's the whole core of prosper in the kingdom. We want you to really realize what money is, what your potential is, not just for you and your family, but to follow and walk in God's word and realize that, hey, I want to be a blessing, not only to my family, I want to be a good Christian example of what I'm doing and also be a blessing to others and help those others that are in need. And also take the time to show them what you're doing, to teach them to kind of pay it forward, right? So that way we start growing stronger as a Christian community. And, believe me, now more than ever, we need to do that.
Yeah.
Again, just kind of look at some modern examples. Income comes in, lifestyle consumes it. It's like this ebb and flow. We're trying to make it to the next check. And then, I'm working so hard because you're so stressed out because you have zero margin. And so what do? You reward yourself with any little extra that you have for dealing with it. And again, that no margin creates no multiplication. That's why you need to have a plan in place. You can't multiply what you never deploy, and you're just going to end up getting by and nothing's ever going to change. So, So let's kind of recap this and kind of close this out. So Matthew 25, again, the parable of the talents, right? Those who multiplied were not only blessed, they were entrusted with more, right? Because they showed God they were good stewards and kind of following the guide, right? The one that did nothing lost everything. Okay. And it's not a judgment, right? Don't think of this as judgment. We're not judging you. This is us trying to help you grow and teach you that this is a responsibility that you have as a Christian, right? And the challenge I want to put out there, ask yourself, am I just managing what God gave me or multiplying it? Okay. And that's a question only you can answer, right? And, ultimately you're going to meet God, right? We all are one-on-one, and he's going to know our hearts on what we were doing. And we're going to have to answer that question, right? What I gave you, did you manage it? Just kind of get by with it, or did you actually go out and multiply it? So kind of the key shifts, mindset shifts, if you will, go from survival mode to stewardship mode.
Yeah.
Okay. Be intentional. And if you need help, we're here to help you, right? Go from maintenance to multiplication, because when you go into multiplication mode, all of a sudden the financial pressures that you feel, they don't go away overnight. But just having a plan in place, just being empowered to know, okay, now I see the path. all of a sudden the forest doesn't become so scary anymore, right? Because you see the path, you're on the path, and remind yourself that God is not just providing for you, he's positioning you, okay, to help, to do the things in the kingdom that he wants you to do, to live that life that he has designed for you, not just get by in survival mode. That's what the enemy wants for you. You staying scared, you staying in survival mode and things like that. So kind of close out, if you do want some guidance on that, if you do need some help, get your Safe Money Roadmap. We talk about that on every episode. We'll put the link in the notes, safemoneyroadmap.com. It's a free plan. Do with it what you will. We can give you some guidance on where you should be focusing, but start aligning your money with purpose. Okay. Don't align your money to buy the new boat. Don't align your money to buy the new car. Align your money to build the kingdom, right? To do your part. And also just an ask from us, make sure if you found value in this video, give us a like, subscribe, share this, right? If you're on the podcast, make sure you give us that 5-star review and subscribe. That really helps us with the algorithm. It helps us get the message out to other Christians that are struggling and, hey, I need some financial guidance. Because let's be honest, that's one of the big areas most people struggle with in their journey. And it holds a lot of people back from having a deeper relationship with Christ. So Wendy, anything else to add?
No, it's good stuff. I feel like y'all share this.
A lot.
People need to hear it.
They do. So many people live in fear, and just share the video and help them out. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again for being here. And we love you guys. Go out, get intentional, get in the fight. And we'll see you next week on another Prosper in the Kingdom.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Prosper in the Kingdom. If this episode added value to your day, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with someone who could use the encouragement. For more resources, head to prosperinthekingdom.com. Let's continue building lives of purpose and abundance, one step at a time.